Hello, my name is John Edward Lee, and I'm very happy to introduce you to the Library of Alexandria. I'm a book and comic book collector, although I do collect toys from the books and comic books specifically, and some extra things like some big ships and some aliens and things like that. But I'm really excited to be able to talk all about that because, as you see, I've collected a lot of books. This is the tip of the iceberg as far as that goes. I've been collecting since 1992, getting every book and every comic of like novels, not necessarily the kids' books, but all the comic issues. So I'm really happy to show some stuff off. Thank you so much.
Hello, YouTube. Welcome to another edition of Star Wars Collections and Displays. As always, I am Jack. With me always is Jim. I just want to say that we're kind of exploding right now. Our subscriber rate has gone up and up week after week. A lot of people are enjoying this. The best way to get us out there to the rest of the viewers is to like this video. So if you're watching this long format style interview, go ahead and like it now. That will let other viewers know, hey, there's something going on over here. They'll tune in, they'll like it, and we'll get more people to watch our interviews. With us today, we have a gentleman, looks like his name is John. I'm going to pass it over to you, John. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your collection. Where are you zooming in from?
Hello, my name's John Edward Lee. I'm from Virginia. I'm actually originally from the Shenandoah Valley, most beautiful part of the whole country. I started collecting Star Wars comics and books around 1992, 1993 when I was about 13, and it's just expanded and expanded just like the universe of Star Wars itself.
Very cool. Very cool. And Virginia, too. I don't think we've spoke to anybody in Virginia yet, have we?
This might be our first Virginia.
Ooh.
I'm about an hour away. Originally, I was about an hour away from D.C., so Washington, D.C. rural area.
Mm-hmm. And where in Virginia are you now?
I'm on the East Coast currently.
East Coast of Virginia. Okay, got it. Yep.
Yes.
I have some family that they're originally from like the Norfolk, Virginia area, which I think is like
that's southeast. A little south of me,
right.
But yes, yeah. that's the coast.
That little geography. Yes, awesome.
And where is Plymouth? Where is Plymouth Rock?
Way north. Oh, that's like in Massachusetts.
Way north.
See, I don't know my geographical history very well.
If you see a map of Virginia, there's this little dangly part on the end across from the Chesapeake Bay. That's where I am, on the
awesome.
Virginia Peninsula.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
So let's go ahead and start off and give us an idea as to what is your passion as far as Star Wars collections or collectibles? Is it action figures, vehicles, helmets, lightsabers, comics, books?
It is everything that's not a movie or a show, basically. I was born in 1979, so my first time seeing a Star Wars movie was 4 years old when Return of the Jedi came out, and I was really into Ewoks, as you can imagine I would be. So my first cutting my tooth on Star Wars was watching the Ewoks movies and cartoons, and as soon as that was in me, I wanted to see everything beyond the movies and the shows eventually as well. So that's where I got into comic books and books. My 14th year of my life, the summer, I read Heir to the Empire, and my favorite Star Wars book ever. My life changed and my Star Wars world got a lot bigger.
Wow. Now, is that a first edition hardcover that you held up there?
It's a science fiction club edition, so it is a first edition, but it's not like the one that you would buy in stores.
Not the retail, yeah.
Check it out. I got Timothy Zahn to sign it for me.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. That's great. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Wow. So this will kind of be a little bit of a first for us as far as the books. I am interested also in the comics, and then I believe you're also doing some video games as well.
Yeah, because that's part of the expanded universe. It's stories beyond the movies.
Okay, so expanded universe, and I've heard this in reference to like Superman and such. It's just the story goes beyond the normal, typical, what I'm all familiar 60s baby boomer story version.
Yeah, what basically there was a lull in time between like 1986 and like 1991 where there's no Star Wars stuff. So Lucasfilm decided that they wanted to bring it back. So they commissioned this book as well as some comic books and created the expanded universe, which was about, it goes back 25,000 years before the movies to about 40 years after the movies. And then when Disney bought Star Wars, they reset it. So now we have two continuities, a new continuity as well as the old expanded universe. New continuity is known as the new canon. Old continuity, I think of it as expanded universe, but now it's known as Legends.
Wow.
Beautifully explained. Yes.
Boy, Disney just made a mess out of things, didn't they?
I disagree. I think
okay.
at first I was really upset and I
Uh-huh.
was like, I want to see more about these characters. But with what they've done with the comic books and the books, they bolster the movies and the shows really well. The old continuity bolstered extra eras. So they went to Old Republic and into the future, and they didn't focus on the movies so much. So what Disney has done is really trying to create a background for the movies themselves. So I'm really happy with what Disney has done with the comic books and books.
Went a little further into the characters and such, as opposed to continuing to go out.
Yes, the comic book series, Star Wars itself, that Marvel started in 2015, the 3 years it took, they filled the time between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. 3 years after that, they filled in the time period between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And just this year, they're now continuing beyond Return of the Jedi. So they've really filled in the gaps. Like, you find out that Luke gets a yellow lightsaber between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which is great because that fits into the original Luke action figure with the yellow lightsaber. So it's perfect. It's beautiful. It's poetry.
It rhymes. Now, at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there something called Shadows of the Empire that kind of filled in the gap between Empire Strikes Back and
yes,
Return of the
absolutely. Jedi? One of my favorite things. In fact, just this week I got some Shadows of the Empire figures.
That's Luke in disguise
Leia,
there with the boots,
outfit, and Luke in the Imperial outfit. So Shadows of the Empire was in 1995, 1996. So what they wanted to do, they want to test the water with if Star Wars was still going to gain any money. So they created everything but a movie. So Shadows of the Empire was a video game, which focused on Dash Rendar, a book, which focused on the main characters, a comic book series, which focused on Boba Fett, and a musical soundtrack that was used in the video game as well as its own standalone soundtrack. They also created a bunch of action figures for it as well as part of the Power of the Force series of figures, which was the 90s resurrection of the Star Wars action figures.
Right. I believe those came out late 95, early 96. They had the purple stripe across the card. Yeah. Very interesting.
Exactly.
So is then Shadows of the Empire
purple right here.
And there's that purple still. They're still using that motif. So is Shadows of the Empire then considered what would be Legends now? And what Marvel's done in the comic books is something different?
Yes. In fact, what they did in the new comic books, it was called Crimson Empire, which was originally War of the Bounty Hunters, where the bounty hunters are fighting over Han. And what is really great, because like I said, the Marvel comics bolster the movies, the main character in this Crimson Empire War of the Bounty Hunters is Kira from Solo, the movie Solo, like Han Solo's ex-girlfriend. She's now in charge of the Crimson Dawn, and that was the whole thing. So they've replaced Shadows of the Empire, although they did mention Shizor in that series. So it's been replaced, but with something actually bigger. I don't say it's better, I don't say it's worse, but it's bigger.
Interesting. They kept a little bit of it, but they expanded even beyond that. They're calling it something different, and that's kind of what is going to become the canon now, is that?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you for all that explanation. And that's why we're here. That's awesome.
So for someone who doesn't read or read those books, and is only familiar with, episodes 4, 5, and 6, and then 1, 2, and 3, and 7, 8, and 9, where do the book's stories go?
So that's a loaded question because they go in a lot of different directions. As far as the books go, the big thing that's been going on for the past couple of years is the High Republic books, which is now it's like 25 books at this point. It's been like 4 years. That takes place originally about 200 years before the movies. And then the second phase is 150 years before that. And then the third phase, they come back. And it's called the High Republic because it's the highest point of the Jedi Order. They wear golden robes. There's peace all over the galaxy. But these pirates called the Nihil have decided to disrupt the Republic. And that's where that comes. There's no Sith because this is not the 1,000 years before the movies where Yoda says we haven't seen the Sith in 1,000 years. It's a different kind of pirates, a different kind of story. So that's really where the books begin as far as continuity. As far as the books themselves go, when they started out, they did stuff around the original trilogy. There's a Tarkin book, Dark Lords of the Sith, which is about the Emperor and Darth Vader, and New Dawn, which was about Rebels, which was the first Disney TV show that they made once they acquired Star Wars.
Would, time-wise, there be a visual difference between what I'm used to seeing Star Wars and if one of these stories was to be visually reproduced or produced? Would it look significantly different? I mean, 50 years between now, 2025, and go back to 1975, there's a big difference.
Yeah, I think you can actually see that difference in the TV shows they make now. Mandalorian and Ahsoka and shows like that would be what you would expect to see if these books and comic books were made live action. Now, I'm a big animation fan, so I would like to see these stories animated in very, very, very wildly different ways, like Star Wars Visions or, Star Wars Visions, which is like anime. It's still like an anthology. I would like to see different kinds of animation. But if you were going to adapt these books to modern times, I think they would just look like Mandalorian or Ahsoka or Kenobi or any of those shows.
Not terribly different from what I'm expecting to see then.
Yeah, and exactly. But one of the things I love about Disney is they use physical puppets and physical droids and stuff like that. I don't hate the prequels, but the CGI was so overdone. I do like that Disney has gotten back to using physical puppets and animatronics.
The practical effects, for sure.
That's actually my big complaint with where the Iron Man, what did that progress into story-wise with all the other people in there? It just, the movies just became so overwhelmingly...
Yeah, a lot of CGI.
I can't keep up with it. It's just like, it almost chased me away.
Jim, I don't know how much you watched of The Acolyte, but correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I believe The Acolyte takes place about 100, 200 years before kind of like A New Hope.
Yes, it takes place exactly between the High Republic and A New Hope. It's 100 years before the High Republic is 100 years before that, 2 years before the movie. So yeah, it's an extension of the High Republic. And okay. I know a lot of people didn't really vibe with that show, but if you had read the books, if you knew those characters, you would have vibed with that show for sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, so few of us did do that, but I think, Disney's had a few missed opportunities with some of their shows, but at the same time, you can always seep out a little bit of lore, a little bit of something that's good. And I think that's what keeps Star Wars fans hopeful that more to come will be a good thing.
Well, I think they also got caught up in kind of a social issues at this time, and that worked against them as well.
Sure.
And they may have even created some of those problems themselves.
Well, but Jim, as far as the costuming and that, I think to answer your question earlier, how the Jedi were dressed there and some of the High Republic people that were on the different Star Cruisers and things, how they were dressed, that's kind of what you would more see from like the earlier Republic.
Yes. Yeah, the golden and brown, because they're so arrogant at that moment. They're almost at the height of their power, they don't even they've got no Sith to fight and haven't had for 1,000 years. They're
You
really
sound
arrogant.
like Cassian Andor right now.
Oh,
I walk into their house and
the
steal
Andor
their
might
stuff,
be my
and they
favorite
don't
Star
even know
Wars
it. They're
thing
so
ever.
full of
I love
themselves. Yes.
Andor.
Yes.
We're looking forward to it for sure.
So I have two
What's that?
questions.
Peeking out? Oh man.
I have I've been reposting all the Andor stuff on Facebook all week. The two questions I have in regards to books as we go into it, the stories, I have to assume that these are somehow licensed, certainly by Lucas. Yeah. And I know Disney is really vicious at going after non-licensed things or infringements. So somebody has to be out there said, okay, I need to create this big universe, and here's kind of where we want to go. And then we've got this writer and this writer and this writer. Let's approach them with that story and see what they can write. And then they create this ongoing, and it just keeps snowballing. And yes.
So the way that they do the stories, the way that they first off, in the original EU, before Disney bought Star Wars, George Lucas had a say. He gave check mark on everything. He didn't like Mara Jade that much, but he gave the check mark to Mara Jade. And that's how that went. And back then, and it's continued today with the new, it's still the same company, really. You know, it's not just because Disney bought them doesn't mean the same people and the same structure isn't there. So they do these things like the Clone Wars, like between Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith. They had a council of writers that worked on the ongoing books and comic books. And the comic books between those movies, it's like 80 issues. Like, it was a big deal. And it was a council of people. They had a council of people to do the New Jedi Order. You may have heard them called the Yuzan Vong War. It was 20 writers. The same things happen today with the High Republic. It's a council of writers who work very intimately together to create these worlds and to make them a fabric that's just as engaging as the movies or the video games.
Yeah. John, you've sold it very well. I know that I, in particular, am not a big reader. I don't know a lot of these stories. I would believe that a lot of our viewership and people out there are also not big readers, but obviously you're very enthusiastic about it. If you could tell them one thing to read, like, you know, recommend the highest one. Is it a book? Is it a comic book? What would you say, tip your toe into this one?
I've already mentioned it. The original Heir to the Empire. I've read 200 Star Wars books. That was the first one I ever read. It's still my favorite. Grand Admiral Thrawn is one of the best Star Wars characters ever made. I don't even think Ahsoka or Rebels even shows how great he is. That book is where I would tell anyone to start. One of the best things they ever did is when Timothy Zahn started writing the prequel trilogy in the new continuity, it still fits in with both continuities. Because it's Thrawn's backstory, you can go along with the new continuity, you can go along with the old continuity. That is the cornerstone of all Star Wars comics and books. And there is a comic book adaptation of that as well.
Thank you for that. And if somebody wanted to jump in after 2012, after Disney got in, where's the jump in point there?
That's an interesting question. There's a lot of really good stuff. It would really depend on what you are into. If you were into the new movies, the sequel trilogy, I would say Shadow of the Sith, which explains Luke and Lando talking about the clone that was the Emperor, like the Rey's parents. That's a good one. It's really hard. In the new one, there's so many. Okay, I got an answer for you.
Okay.
Aftermath.
Aftermath.
This is it.
Okay.
This is the new Thrawn trilogy, essentially. This takes place about 6 years after the books. That is the next generation of Star Wars. People have a problem with the way it's very written, very conversationally. Mm-hmm. So if you press through that novel, that whole trilogy is amazing.
Okay, Aftermath for after Disney, Heir to the Empire for pre-Disney.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you.
How do the books vary and spawn the animation or the videos or whatever word you want to use that I'm going to call them movies of some sorts.
Got you. I got a good example of that right here. Let me find the right one. So in the Clone Wars, before the movie, there was the cell animated series, but then there was the computer animated one. That's based on this series. You can see Asajj Ventress right there. She existed way before she existed in the Clone Wars series because she showed up in the original comic book. So a lot of those characters have bled through into other media. Rebels use a lot of characters. My favorite thing about the Rebels cartoon series is it uses ships from the old EU all the time. I have a guide of ships from the 90s. The people who made that show went back through, like, looked at every Ralph McQuarrie painting, every picture of every ship, and brought those back into modern times. So there's a strong connection between the old stuff and what we're still seeing today.
Beautiful.
The thing that I think I enjoyed the most about Star Wars, aside from the stories and some of the characters, would be the connections. Whether it be a book or, as I'm understanding, a video, or I'm watching an original, or I'm watching a prequel, or the afterquill, and there's always connections going on in there. I mean, we're joking right now about how excited we are about Andor, and how many connections is Andor taking us all the way back to A New Hope, which at the time wasn't even called A New Hope.
Well, of course, Andor is based on Rogue One, and Rogue One, the entirety of Rogue One, is based in the first paragraph of the crawl, where they're like, the rebels have had their first victory. That's Andor. That's Rogue One. That Rogue One actually might be my favorite Star Wars movie.
Oh, it is for sure mine. I am so excited about the upcoming April 22nd. I mean, Disney Plus, they'll be overwhelmed with streamers that night.
I'm so excited about seeing K2 again. Oh, Alan Tudyk as K2 is one of my favorite Star Wars characters.
Absolutely.
By the way, I have a question I'll ask you. This is an odd question. In one of those promos, I see the girl who plays Biggs, and she's standing next to that big guy who did Aquaman. Is he somehow in Andor season 2?
No.
I'm not exactly sure if he is in Andor season 2 or not. I've actually tried to avoid as much as possible the Andor season 2, just because I want to go into it.
Maybe the girl is dating the guy or something like that. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, who knows?
Let's not speculate now. We'll just watch
two ahead of the old season. There could be a lot of stuff going on between them.
Kind of given us a little bit of an idea of the books and the videos. Somehow the comics also seem to kind of bleed into there, and they're another version of a way of literally getting that story out.
Well, I do love the books very much, but the comic books is my favorite of all of them. The old Marvel comic books that expanded beyond the movies, and then when Dark Horse took over Dark Empire, Tales of the Jedi that took place 4,000 years before the movies, that stuff is my bread and butter. So I think the comic book is actually much richer than anything else. But I'm a comic book guy. I didn't read books as a child. I read comic books. In fact, when I read Star Wars books today, it's audiobooks because I can't physically read books. I have a problem with it.
Okay, so you do the audiobook style. Okay. And I guess for viewers out there, if they wanted to... So audiobook, you don't even have to read. Just do the audiobook. Yeah. I'm talking to the viewers
I work all day. I listen to audiobooks while working. It's perfect. It takes me out of my regular humdrum life into a galaxy far, far away.
Beautiful.
So you trying to utilize our normal list of various questions. I'm going to jump to is there a series, a story, or a batch of books or comic books that appeal to you?
Yes, my favorite series of comic books is the Knights of the Old Republic series. If you know Knights of the Old Republic, it was a video game for the Xbox. There was a sequel, Knights of the Old Republic 2. There was also eventually an MMORPG, The Old Republic. But Knights of the Old Republic is a series that takes place about a few years before the video games. They it's like the Lord of the Rings of Star Wars. Like it's an older story. The characters are just as engaging, but they exist in a different time with similar elements. It's not like the prequels. The prequels are kind of weird because you're like, wait, it's in the past, like a few years before, but the technology is better. That doesn't make sense. This makes sense. Like the ships have sails, they have older things. That is my favorite. It's John Jackson Miller, who I share a birthday with, writes it, as well as many Star Wars books. Knights of the Old Republic, the comic book series. That's my favorite.
Okay.
And I've seen some videos of the number of books and such that you have. In the sense of books, comic books, and videos, what kind of numbers are we talking as far as the books? I think you said 200 books just a few moments ago.
Yeah, more than 200. I'd say between 200 and 300. The comic books are in the thousands at this point. I mean, 1992, they bring out like 3 to 10 series a month over that amount of time. Like it's crazy. I get a monthly shipment from the comic book store I grew up with still. Like since I was 11 years old, I still have them send me my comic books, and they supplied my entire collection. But it's like 6 series a month right now for Star Wars with the Old Republic. And it's not just Marvel. Dark Horse also brings out, so it's Marvel and Dark Horse right now bringing out comic books. So there's been 4 different publishers over the entire time, and they brought out a lot.
And it sounds like they continue to bring out a lot. Like this is current, like 6 different series going on, right? And what do you think?
Exactly. Right now, what they're doing, like I mentioned earlier on, is they're continuing just beyond Return of the Jedi. So all new series with Luke, Leia, and Han and the gang going from Endor and beyond.
Yeah, got it. Interesting. Comic books as well. Why Star Wars? There's so many different IPs out there that you could have latched on to. What do you think? Why is it Star Wars is the one that you said, I'm going to follow this one?
So I had a moment in my freshman year of high school where I had to decide what my thing was going to be. And it was almost Aliens and Predator. And I had to decide between the two because I couldn't do both, and Star Wars just had so much more stuff. I mean, and I'm talking about 1994. It didn't even have that much stuff at that point. Right. But I was like, I feel like this is just going to keep going and going and going. And it really did. Aliens and Predator continue to go on, but not nearly on the same level, as much as I love them as well.
Yeah.
And your collection of the books that we see behind you, along with what you've shared with me so far, is that the result of collecting things and finding some place to put them, or is it a collection, as with people who collect action figures, a need to collect the 1977 or 78 versions, and they excel at all 99, or in this case, as Jack calls it, 100 characters? I mean, is there a motivation for gathering the books?
My motivation is to complete the story. I don't care about editions necessarily. I go for hardcover when I can, as far as books go. I go for individual issues as far as comic books, because here's the thing about me. I want to see those old advertisements in comic books. So my motivation to get in individual issues to go, hey, there's an Atari ad. Hey, there's an ad for the old action figures. My goal is to get the whole story, just to get the legend out there. So it's not so much a specific edition. I have a couple things. I have pretty much all the books one way or another, but there are some older editions that I probably could add. And if I come across them, I'll add them.
And older editions would supplement or replace current or newer versions?
Yes, a good example is I have a paperback of the Lando trilogy that was from the 80s. There are hardback versions that are so hard to come by. If I ever got those, I would replace that book with the hardcovers.
Okay, so and the collection of the books is to serve as, okay, I read them, it's now up here, and I can discard the books, or I need to hang on to those books because there's some if somebody questions me, I can go access that book and prove what I want to
That's
say.
it. That's the access. I can access this stuff faster than I can access internet. Like I can actually go, oh, I know the comic book. I don't have to research it. I know it. Most of the time. I mean, I'm over emphasizing my skill here, but for the most part, I'd rather go find a physical copy and find the line in a book. One of my favorite things is the inaccuracies in the original novelizations. One of my favorite things to do is go find the exact page in the Return of the Jedi novelization from 1983 where it says Uncle Owen is Obi-Wan's brother, which is real. That's in that book. That's what I want to do, is be able to say, this is real. See, you don't have to look it up. You don't have to look at Wikipedia or Wikipedia. You can't trust that. You can trust the print.
Interesting. Oh boy, I just love this series. That you can go so in-depthly into something that it's exciting. It's exciting to see people such as yourself who get excited about it, and it's exciting to hear the excitement in your voice about that. So I congratulate you. I applaud you. That's quite unique, and I find that interesting. When collecting these various books, as opposed to action figures, is the quality of the book an issue?
It depends. If it's really old, you get what you get. I mean, here's the thing. In the past like 5 years, I've moved 4 times. That puts some wear and tear on a collection, whether it's action figures or whatnot. Comic books, not so much. I have some very pristine comic books because I keep them in these BCW.
Going to be one of my questions down the road.
Everyone asks about these. BCW, who makes comic book stuff, this holds about 15 issues in the bags, boards, or 20 without. It's got a sleeve. I just take these to Staples and just whatever my favorite issue is, I just make a photocopy, and on the computer I make the thing. They're not cheap. They're like $12 a piece, and I have over 100 of them, and I need more. But I hated my comic books being in long boxes that you couldn't display. I wanted to display them like I display my books.
Well, that's another interesting note, and that is displaying comic books. I have a customer of mine collects different comic books, and from my view, they're not out visually in his house. And they always talk about in the boxes. And I'm just thinking, did you go buy that hot, high quality comic to put it in that plastic sleeve and then put it in that cardboard box up in the attic?
And no one can see it. Yeah,
exactly. But maybe to them, the satisfaction is that got checked off up on that mental list. And so it's interesting what and this might be an interesting question. It kind of comes back to my motivation, investment, look, or enjoyment, or grading. But back to the book part, I don't read a whole lot, but if I decide I want to learn something about 1850s horse buggies, when I go to Amazon and look up 1850s horse buggies books, I will always buy the used version because I'm going to read it once and put it off to the side.
And somebody loved it at some point. It's got a history. It's got a legacy.
Very true.
Importance of items collected. Well, obviously, the not so much. Can't use the word accuracy, but I picked up on you twice now. You know that there are variations not only in the action figures, but obviously variations in the story. This version here said this, and this version over here, written later on, said that.
Yeah. Here's a really good example. The original comic book adaptation of Star Wars, Leia mentions her father being Bail Antilles, not Bail Organa. There are lots of the Jabba the Hutt is in that comic book. It's a completely different alien. Like, it's not the Jabba the Hutt we know, because that didn't come out till Return of the Jedi movie came out. So there are lots of variations. My favorite that, like, I like the prequels fine, but the novelization of the prequels are 1,000 times better than the actual movie. You want to know how Anakin killed all those Tusken Raiders? It is told in exquisite detail in those novels. There's so much more stuff. The Emperor straight up says in Revenge of the Sith, "I created you," in so many, not in so many words, but like the novelizations for the prequels are a variation of the original story that are far better than the actual films.
I think that sold me. I'm gonna get the audio for that.
As you're
Jar
telling,
Jar's easier to take in print, I tell you for sure.
We'll check it out.
Again, not being a big reader, but we were either forced to read in high school, which I didn't half the time anyhow. But I remember the movie Jaws. Well, I had read the book before the movie came out. Why, I don't know, but I do know this, that there's a lot in the book that's not talked about in the movie.
Yeah.
For example,
exactly.
Who's the scientist guy that came in to help do the research? Duffy? What's his
Richard
name?
Dreyfuss's character.
Richard Dreyfuss. I got Duffy out of that. Well, he supposedly in the book had a love affair with the policeman's wife. Not in the movie at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Another layer. Absolutely.
Seeing how the two can vary a little bit there.
You know, John, I wanted to talk.
Oh, sorry. The Star Wars novelizations for the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy came out months before the movie. So you could have gone and read this whole story. The comic book adaptation of the original Star Wars, right there, came out like months before the movie itself. So if you were like into science fiction, you knew a lot more before that movie came out. Of course, I was 2 years away from being born at that time, but
we don't blame you for not getting it before. It's okay.
I appreciate that.
Yes. You know, I did want to, I'm a big action figure guy. You can see the picture behind me here. That's my 100 original Star Wars action figures. I saw some video of different parts of your collection that looked like there was like a G.I. Joe part of the collection.
I shared that with him because he shared it with me. He must have seen the G.I. Joe interview we did. So he shared that with me. And I said to him, I says, Jack will have more of a connection with that later series than I will. Because I was the 60s, the 12-inch version.
Right. And these are kind of more of a modern 6-inch version, but of the real American heroes that came out in between kind of like 1982, 1987, that version. What I really wanted to talk about specifically is you have them out on display. They're awesomely displayed. You have like Mutt and Snake Eyes and one of them together. So you've got the animals all together there. So Pentor's on his own. You've got like, Cobra Command, all his people there. Very cool.
I told you he'd know all about them.
But I also see the boxes displayed back behind them. And I just wanted to know from a display collector side of things, why have the loose figures and then also the boxes?
Because there's the side art for each character. You can look at them, and the way I have them displayed, character on the display, in background is that character's box, and it's different artists on each one. Like the Spirit one looks very there's no like outlines on it. It's very geometric, as opposed to Snake Eyes, which has a more comic book look to it. So I think it gives a good backdrop. I hate a white wall or a plain background behind an action figure. I don't like that at all.
So having that box art is actually important.
I will tell you that G.I. Joe Classified series is my favorite series of action figures out right now. It is so amazing.
What makes it so amazing? Why is it your favorite?
Well, first off, every G.I. Joe that I love is somehow, one way or another, my dad. So, because he was an Army guy. He had a mustache. Half the G.I. Joes in the 80s had mustaches. I grew up on it. I mean, like I said, I was born in 79. So at the time that cartoon and comic book came out, I was like 5 to 8, So, I mean, it's just Americana. Every character was so cool. The bad guys were just so cool. I mean, I feel that way about Transformers, X-Men, Ninja Turtles as well. G.I. Joe, just that particular set of action figures really captures those characters super well. Better than the Star Wars action figures these days.
Interesting. And the 6-inch, you kind of prefer that size versus the 3 and 3/4.
Yeah, the 3 3/4, they're just they're not dynamic enough for me. The 6 inches, you can get these crazy poses, and I'm a big fan of the poster putty, the fun tack that you put posters on the wall. You put those in the feet of any figure and they will stay there forever. And you can, I mean, I've got like quick kick, like doing a straight up kick with his foot in the air. Like, I mean, it's amazing. It really captures the characters well.
And so you just have the putty on just one of the feet at the bottom, as opposed to using like a stand or something like that. And you think that holds it even better?
Yeah.
And does it damage the figure?
And I do that for everything.
Does it leave any residue or damage the figure or what you're displaying it on? Is it like a glue?
Pick it up and it leaves residue, you can take a ball of the other stuff and roll it right up. It'll pick it right up. It'll just attach. It attaches to itself better than it attaches to anything else.
It's like mercury.
What's it called again? What's it called again?
Fun tack or poster putty. Like poster putty's blue. I don't like the blue. They do a new one that's called Fun Tack that's white. Gorilla Glue also does poster putty, but I like the Fun Tack. Loctite, I think is what it's called.
Cool.
So you were born in '79. The movies came out 1 year ahead of that, and a couple years after that. You were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, so that means you've been collecting or gathering books for what, the last 40 some years?
I've been collecting the books and comics since '92. I grew up in a household where we were a yard sale family. You had to sell your old toys to get new toys. So I have very, very little of my original collection. However, I do have my very first action figure I got when I was age 3, and that's my Greedo right here. I remember Christmas looking at this thing and being like, I love this. That's where I became a Star Wars fan, that figure alone. But very little I have kept from my childhood because we were supposed to get rid of stuff to get new stuff.
Congratulations.
Although I can tell you, I also have my very first Star Wars comic book, which is from the Ewoks. Look how tattered this guy is. Like, I've loved this guy to the ends of the earth. Look at that brown edge. The cover doesn't even stay on it. I love it so much. But those are the two things I have kept all these years.
Well, once again, I applaud you for having that kind of stuff. Many people, like myself, only got into collecting recently, but there are a few people that we've interviewed that still have some piece of their original collection.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What's crazy is that actually has existed. When I was in high school in the '90s, I used to like tie this to a string and wear it like a necklace, like out in the public. It's still like a solid figure.
Guys in New York had like the Mercedes symbols that they were wearing. And down in Virginia, John was wearing Greedos.
Greedo, yep, that's real.
That's cool.
So is there a particular spot in your house, such as what we see behind you, that is where you kind of display your collection? Is it a room? Is it down the hallway? Is it in every room? Are the neighbors happen to move out?
The library and the Star Wars figures are in this particular room that we're in right now. I shared some of my helmets. That's in a different room. My G.I. Joes, Transformers, and 80s collection is in my living room behind the TV. And in my bedroom is where I have some extra Transformers and my Marvel collection. So not everything's in the same room, but as far as Star Wars, most of it's in this room. I have a ton of posters that I cannot display that are in the attic.
I did see some video of some of the posters, and we'll show those to you as well. In fact, there was some actually quite unique posters. And in fact, if I may ask a few interesting questions about some of the stuff, something that popped out to me right away, and I don't know why, but this is a question I had asked a few interviews back. Dr. Aphra.
Yes.
Who is she again?
Dr. Aphra is absolutely one of my favorite characters. Dr. Aphra showed up early on the Marvel took over Star Wars again. She was originally part of the Darth Vader series, and then just grew on her own. The secret to her is she is the Star Wars anti-hero version of Indiana Jones. She is a female bad guy Indiana Jones. She's an adventuring archaeological, like that's what she does. She's an archaeological like explorer. So she's really, really cool, and she has the best side characters, including some murderous droids. Obviously, she works with Darth Vader for a while, and lately, in the past couple of years, she's sort of become an actual hero. The rebels have sort of like called her over to their side, and she's more of a good guy. But she's one of the big characters in the Star Wars comic book world these days.
And she appears in comic books as opposed to videos or books.
She had, well, there's this extra world beyond the books that are audio dramas. Amazon produces all these amazing audio dramas. So Dr. Aphra has an audio drama that has actually been, you can buy the teleplay of the book, but the audio drama is really good. So she's a little bit further than just the comic books. But yeah, primarily she's a comic book character.
Interesting. Very interesting. As we go down through some of the notes of it, a lot of, I saw vehicles in there, but I also saw a collection of the Black Series
yes.
figures.
Yeah, I used to collect every Black Series figure, and it got crazy. So now I really only collect some of my favorite characters, a lot of female characters, and whatever's from the books, comics, and video games. I actually went through, had a period where I sold off a lot of my Black Series collection, and that sort of helped get through like the post-COVID times.
An interesting question about selling off. That just terrifies me. I didn't buy my stuff as an investment with the expectation of making money, and
I didn't either.
the thought of selling, getting rid of my stuff, kind of bothers me, and that brings up a potential hoarder issue. But that's a whole nother story. I just wouldn't want to let go. I mean, I boxed up some Tonka trucks today, and as I'm boxing them up, I thought, I'll never look at these again. But as opposed to the thought of listing them on eBay for sale, just didn't appeal to me. So tell me a little bit about having to get rid of something or whatever. I mean, there must have been some pressing reason, and I'm not interested in it, but there must have been a motivation for needing to or wanting to sell.
Well, a lot of it was room, and a lot of it was I was actually getting upset with the direction that the series was going, where they were just making different variations of the same stormtrooper over and over again, and I just decided not to do it anymore. I've been off and on with collecting. At one point, I sold my whole collection of the Power of the Force figures, and in 8 years, I didn't collect at all, and then the Black Series came out, and I started collecting again. Like I said, I'm from a family where we sold stuff all the time, like when I was a child. I, at one point, had 300 of the original Ninja Turtle figures from the 90s. You know, those are sold, you know, because we just, you know, I wanted to get X-Men figures instead. And then I wanted to get Predator figures instead. And then the Power of the Force came out. So
interesting.
Yeah. Our next set of questions typically would be involved with how the items are displayed, whether they're shelved or pinned, suspended, what's the display made out of. I'm going to assume that the majority of that is kind of what we see in the background, the bookcase kind of thing. IKEA is a name that comes up quite frequently.
I think these were from Target, these shelves, but they're these amazing four, like, almost bronze colored shelves, and I really like them. So I've kept them for a long time. Really, the display ability is more focused on the boxes for the comic books more than the shelves themselves. As far as action figures, I just use a tack on the wall. I have some things in protective cases, like this is my favorite piece of my collection, an original Ewok figure, my favorite character from that. This isn't a, this can just hang up on the wall, but most of the things are just out in the open. I dust pretty regularly. I just put blackout curtains in the room, so everything's pretty
I
well
actually
protected.
discovered that dust feather duster that I bought the other day that I
Yes, feather
lost.
dust is the best.
And then I think I lost it again. Meanwhile,
You can
everything
get into the nooks and crannies with a feather duster. Like it really does the trick. Better than anything else.
So my next question, which I think would work with your particular collection of books and such, and that is the books, or what I assume are books behind you. How are they arranged? Is there an order to them?
Chronological order. So the books start with Dawn of the Jedi, which is 25,000 years before the movies, and ends with about 40 years after the movies. Same thing with, it's just separated by continuity. There's the old continuity books, then the new continuity books, then the old continuity comics, and the new continuity comics beyond that. But I think chronological order is the only order as far as Star Wars goes, because you need to know on the timeline where you are.
Mm-hmm. And when you say chronological order, that's obviously on the timeline's chronological order. These books might have come out at different eras or different times.
Oh, yeah. They come out all over the place as far as they come out. But I'm talking about the story itself, chronological as far as the story goes. It was really great in all the old books and the new ones, too. They do this. They have a timeline, like in the beginning of each book. So you can really tell where things are supposed to be. Comic books and books are separate, of course, but the books at least do that timeline so that you know where you are.
That's a nice reference.
Do you, knowing what you said earlier about how you grew up, if you wanted something new, you had to sell something old. The next question is expandability. Do you have the ability to expand further down the hallway, in the next room, on the shelf above the toilet? Or is it one of those things that's ingrained up here that if I need to have something more, I need to get rid of something now?
I have a whole nother set of shelves that are non-Star Wars books that I can always move somewhere else. It's a lot of other comic books, art books, stuff like that. I don't need them to be in this room. They're just taking up space until I can expand.
And John, when we're talking about the books and the comic books, where are your sources? Where are you getting the audiobooks from? Where are you getting the hardbacks from? What store is it that's from 11 years old that you're still getting the comic books sent to you?
Yeah. So as far as the audiobooks and the novels, I just pre-order everything through Amazon, and Audible is also through Amazon. That's where I get all those. So basically I'm paying for a physical book that I'm never going to read just to go in my collection, and an audiobook that I'm going to listen to. The comic books, like I said, I've been going to the same comic book store since I was 11 years old, 4 Color Fantasies in Winchester, Virginia. The best comic book store ever. It's a tiny little place. When you go into a comic book store today, all you're going to get is new stuff. They have old comics. I've seen the original X-Men in that store, the very first issue. And like I said, I've been going there since I was 11 years old, getting every issue. And now I live about 5 hours away, and they still every month send me my month's worth of comic books.
Awesome.
That is
Very
awesome.
cool.
Have that relationship that for that long as well. Not only is he doing well by taking care of you as a customer, but he is apparently doing well enough from a business standpoint to still be in business.
Yeah, the guy who started that comic book store, he got like a master's degree, a bachelor's degree in library science just to create the comic book store. And I mean, 11 years old is when I started. They were still 4 years before that. So we're talking like well over 40 years. That store's been going strong. And in the 90s, about 60% of comic book stores got extinct. This store was strong because it was the first store in like the only comic book store in like a 40-mile radius in the rural area which I grew up in. So very, very amazing store.
Cool.
Your gathering of these books, if I could use the word collecting, Are you obsessive? Are you compulsive? Are you budgeted? Are you under control? Are you out of control?
I'm not out of control. I do prioritize comic books and books over any other kind of collecting for sure. Like I will not get a Transformer to get a Star Wars book, you know, because I know they come out, they get pre-ordered 6 months before they come out, so you really know what you're going to expect, and they don't vary from that date much often. So I definitely have a booklet that I keep with all my pre-orders of action figures and books, comic books. It's harder to do. I just know that I'm going to get that order each month from my comic book store, and it's usually between $30 to $75, so it's not that bad. I think I'm very much in control of it, but like I said, I will always put the books and the comic books before anything else.
When you receive those books and comics and that many that you're getting, do you read them or do they tend to stack?
Yes, I absolutely read them. I at this point of all the comic books, I mean, like 3,000 plus comic books, I've read 99% of them for sure. The books, not so much. I think I've read about 75% of them. And the reason for that is the 90s books, when they had audio, like I mentioned, I have to do audiobooks. Back in the 90s, they were abridged versions of those books. That's 25% of the story. I don't want that. So what they're doing now is they have what's called the Essentials Collection, where they're bringing out old books. Shadows of the Empire we brought out earlier, we mentioned earlier on, that's being re-released with the all new, full, unabridged audiobooks. So right now, I'm filling in those gaps in my 90s books that I've never read. The X-Wing books for right now, I never read those. I've had them for 30 plus years, but I've never read them. Now with these new audiobooks, I'm able to like experience them for the first time. So I've read all the comic books, but the books, there's still a big blank spot in the 90s, which is my favorite era of Star Wars books that I'm still catching up on.
Wow. The gift that keeps on giving. That's cool.
Yeah.
My next question would typically be, who sees your collection?
Well, I do have a YouTube channel, and that's really who sees my collection. I don't, where I am, it's a really rural area, so I don't have people come by very often. So I live with my sister and my dog. They're the only ones who see my collection physically. But online, it has a presence. And as I mentioned in my hello video, I call it the Library of Galexandria. So it has a presence.
Is that the name of your YouTube channel, the Library of Galexandria?
No, the YouTube channel is called Universe Expanding Books and Toys.
Okay. We'll be sure to put a plug of that down in the description down below when we release this. So anyone that wants to check out John's YouTube video, please go down to the description, click on that link, and you'll be right there.
It is interesting.
I just got back into doing it too. I didn't have good internet for a year and a half. So just this week, I've been able to do new content for the first time in a year and a half.
Welcome back. That's awesome.
It is interesting to note that most collectors don't. The collection is for themselves. It's typically not that many people beyond them that actually see them. It's a thing that's within, and how we want to live within that environment.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no furniture in this room. I had to bring a chair in here just for this video.
No living room. It's standing room only in there.
Yep.
And would you say, I know you showed us a couple books, you talked about a couple different comic books. Is there one thing out of the entirety of the collection, I guess maybe that original Ewok that you had, that you would say, this is my showcase item, this is my favorite item from the collection?
I'm not sure if but yeah, I would say that Ewok is probably my favorite comic book I have just because of the history of it. I'm not sure that I would say I have a specific favorite physical item beyond that. I will say that my most valuable thing is Clone Wars issue #1, because it was the first appearance of Ahsoka. I mean, I checked before we did this video. It's like a $500 comic book, you know, like and I don't ever want to get it graded. And I'll tell you why, because I want to still be able to read it. When you grade a comic book, you can't read it anymore.
Interesting.
Interesting. That was a question that we usually ask grading, and I didn't even think in terms of the comic books. But someone like Jack, who will have stuff graded, and he can look at that, and it's got the little accessories in there, and the little
Yeah.
decal that says "A."
I don't have a problem with grading. I just want to be able to read it. That's all.
You know, but once he has his stuff graded, he can't take it out and play with it.
But that's why you have two collections. You've got the loose behind me. I can take those down, show those off. But I also have the graded where if it's, someone has sticky hands, I don't want to show them those. They can check out these over here and it's all protected. And again, I like having them in the acrylic with the accessories like that as opposed to like mock or in the box still, because sometimes you can't see the accessories. And I think the accessories are a big part of it.
I buy Go ahead.
I'm halfway between, like, as far as even grading or not, being encased in something or not, I'm halfway between being an in-box and out-of-box collector. Some things I keep in box, if you can see it really well in there. Some things, if you can't see it in there, that comes out of the box.
Comes out, yeah. I'm definitely a loose collector. It's so hard for me to keep something in the box. It's like I take it out, see it, display it.
Oh,
yeah, that's right.
The one thing that I always take out of the box is Transformers, because you got to transform them.
Sure. Yeah. They're more than meets the eye, for sure.
Interesting that you mentioned the accessories. I've become aware more so lately of accessories. Han Solo's blaster pistol or Princess Leia's blaster pistol, and those have become even harder to find. I had recently acquired Fifth Element 3 3/4 inch collection, and as I went through there, a lot of them have that little triangular stone. That binds light, earth, moon, water, and air, and all of that. The one that I'm currently looking at and struggling with is the original Michael Myers Halloween. And it has a knife in there. And I've got 4 different sellers on eBay that I've approached to say, I don't see it in the picture. And only one has gotten back to me, which tells me the other 3 either don't know or don't have it. And ironically, the one that got back to me not only sent me a picture of the blade in there, but he also happens to be the most expensive one.
Of course.
Probably because of that blade.
And he knows it too. Yeah. We've talked a lot about the books and the videos, but the games we've not mentioned much about. And there's a couple of things I really wanted to ask questions about. You have an Atari Star Wars video game machine there, yes?
There it is.
That's the Atari 2600
I don't actually have
Empire Strikes Back.
Machine. I have the video game itself, but it
I
has the instructions.
Wow. Didn't I see a video of an actual, what I would call a video game machine from the 90s in your video?
It might be a Return of the
sure
Jedi
you did,
game.
But I've been playing them on emulation. I do have an Atari there, but it's a modern one. It's not an original one.
I thought I saw a kind of what Jim is talking about, like an arcade stand of like the Return of the Jedi
the
game.
arcade machine, yes.
Is that like a one-up?
That's also
or who
new.
is that?
That's not an original thing.
Okay.
That's made by Arcade One Up. I bought that as a divorce present for myself.
What do you think of that one-up machine? And is it just the Return of the Jedi game, or are there other games on it?
It is the original Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and the Return of the Jedi all in one system. I also have next to it, I didn't send a picture of it because it wasn't Star Wars related. I also have Miss Pac-Man with Galaga on it as well.
Okay. I've been looking at possibly getting the Dragon's Lair one-up machine.
Oh.
I was a big Dragon's Lair guy back in the day, but now hearing that they have a Star Wars one that has all 3 of those original kind of side scrollers, I might be interested in that one too.
Yeah, it's about a 75% of the size of the original machine, which is actually perfect because if you're going to put it in your home, it needs to be kind of slim.
Yeah. Okay. I saw that.
There was what I will describe as a computer dashboard video that showed a series of different Star Wars files within there, and then there was a graphic of a number of characters. Tell me about that, because I didn't understand what that was.
Well, the characters, first of all, those are the original High Republic characters. Because when it's a new era, when those books started, it was really hard to keep those characters apart. So that has always been my rock as to knowing where those characters are from. The images were of the different Star Wars video games that have come out for PC over the years. So it's not everything, but it's pretty close. I mean, there's 33 of them on that screen. I think I have 40 Star Wars video games total. But yeah, it's stuff from Dark Forces, which was a PC in like 1993, all the way up to Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I don't have Outlaws yet. That's the newest game. But Survivor is the last game before that.
And so those different icons on that dashboard, if I clicked on that, that would open up a video game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Shadows of the Empire's on there. Yeah, lots of great stuff.
There was something else that really stood out to me, but I didn't understand what it was. And that was a nice, what appeared to be a mahogany cabinet with glass doors on it. And inside was neatly placed on each shelf, of which you could have put a whole bunch of action figures, but it was shelf had one little packaged item that I didn't understand what it was. And then there was another video I saw where you opened it up and it seemed to be a video projector of some sorts that shot out what I thought was in, I think, New Hope was that simulated globe with the with the Death Star or something like that in there.
Those are called Vault collections. They've been bringing those out for a while. They've done 6 total. There's an Imperial one, a Sith one, a Bounty Hunters one, a Rebels one, a Jedi one, and a Smugglers one. And they're just elaborate. Like you hit a button and they do these things and make these sounds, and then the book comes out. And like the Sith one is a holocron, Sith holocron, and it has like a kyber crystal in it and like a little artifacts in it. Those were just like, honestly, I would never have paid full price for those. I happened to get a good deal on them, and they just display so perfectly. But each one of those has a book, like I said, Imperial, Sith, blah blah blah. But as their notes, as they're like about, like let's say the Jedi one has little notes from Luke Skywalker where he's read it and like added his own thing to it. So those are really neat. They take up a lot of space. You're right. But they're beautiful pieces.
And you try to have each one has its own shelf. You don't like kind of crowd them.
No. I thought about putting them over here, and I may do that when I need to expand. But for right now, I've got the room to have each one have its own shelf.
Nice.
Very interesting. Tell us about the posters.
Well, I've got a ton of posters that I can't display at all. In the videos, you'll see my closet has posters. One of them is Boba Fett Enemy of the Empire, which is Boba Fett versus Darth Vader. It's interesting. It's a Legends story. It's the origin of the dent in Boba Fett's helmet. I like that one. I even brought these. I got these specifically for the video, things that I can't display, but I have our original animation cells from the Ewoks cartoon. Again, that's that shaman, that figure that I said is my favorite figure. I have, there's another one I have with the Ewoks there.
Interesting that you show those, John. Jim and I were at one of those like action figure conventions. I think maybe the one in Pasadena or one in Simi Valley, and somebody was selling some of those cells, and I was interested in getting one of those. And I made a couple offers.
Here's how they got into the public.
Yeah,
back in the day, if you got a, I would say in the late 90s, 1 year, if you got a year's subscription to the Star Wars Insider magazine, they would send you a cell from Ewoks.
Right.
So they had so many of them. So many people, every Star Wars convention I go to, there's the one seller who has all those Ewoks animation cells. Yeah. Droids animation cells, way harder to find.
Okay. Yeah, I was interested in one of the Ewok ones. I think I made a couple offers and the guy wasn't really willing to budge. It was early in the convention, so I think he thought, there'll be other people that come by. But yeah, those are very cool to have. And now you don't have those out on display. Those are just in storage somewhere.
Yes, they're in a closet. The only reason is because most of the walls in my house are stucco, and you can't like really hang stuff up on stucco walls very easily. This room happens to not have that, so I'm able to hang up action figures, stuff like that. But uh, the place I lived in before, I had a lot more wall space than I do now.
Sure. Yeah, those are cool.
I have an opinion question, and I hate to use the word that it's a political opinion, and I'm not really looking to get into politics, but this is something that I have learned over the last few episodes, and as I see on the news the talk of the tariffs and such, I begin to ask the question to myself, and that is, how is our hobby of collecting, and forgive me, your books, which are a little bit different, but I still want to ask the question. Kenner, Hasbro, Tonka, Palatoy, all of these toy manufacturers, of which we've not even talked about the other ones, were quite they all branched out into China, Japan, Korea, and all of those other places, and they're having all of this stuff sent in, and I'm sure that to a minor degree the toy industry is a small part, maybe a big part, I don't know, of what China supplies to the United States. I'm wondering how these tariff things, or this problem between the US and China, is going to ultimately affect the cost or availability of other future, in our case, Star Wars collectibles.
I just got an email this week. I get most of my collectibles through Big Bad Big Bad Toy Store, and I got an email just this week where they were, it was the guy who owns the company, and he was like, I really don't want to send this message, but we're probably going to have to raise our prices, including the stuff that you're going to pre-order. Their solution, just so you can see it on paper, is when you see it written out, it's going to have the price, the sales tax, and whatever the tariff is going to be, so you can physically see it. I appreciate that. I looked it up today. Marvel Comics, which is where I get most of my comics, they do print in Canada, but they also print in 2 cities in the United States. So I don't expect them to be too affected. Most books are printed in country. I'm from a town that was a Doubleday factory place. So most books are actually going to be in-house. Action figures are going to go up in price, though.
Okay.
Interesting. I'm in the aquarium business, and I talked to my tank manufacturer the other day, and he said, we buy American acrylic, we buy American glass, and so we're not having any price increases. But if you go to so-and-so manufacturer where they have their stuff built in, say, Mexico, that's going to have an increase there. So even in the aquarium business, I got an email from the fish wholesaler. Price of corals, price of imported fish is going to go up. So
yeah, I was glad to find out Marvel does print in the United States. DC does not. DC, I just found out today, prints exclusively in Canada.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. I would have never even thought about it, but if you're
Me
buying
neither.
a Boba Fett figure that was probably assembled in China or outside the country. But now you've just confirmed something I didn't even think of. Comic books. I mean, where are they printed and such? And you already pointed out Canada.
Yep.
So
because it's so close. Who'd have thought it was never a problem before?
But maybe in this case, who's that comic book manufacturer?
DC.
Maybe they'll bring it back to the US. But then that's American people who are doing the printing, running the machines. And who knows, the price may even go higher because American people are expensive. That's why they went to China in the first place. Sure. So to kind of round up our little conversation today, my final 2 questions would be, especially this will be interesting coming from you. Who's your favorite character?
I have 2 favorite characters, the Emperor and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Emperor just because he's such a good bad guy, but Obi-Wan Kenobi is the spiritual character I want to be. Yeah, Obi-Wan's who I want to be. Like, I've jokingly called myself a Kenobi Buddhist before.
And are we talking old Kenobi or young Kenobi?
Oh,
Or
well,
both?
I think of the old Kenobi, but I like young Kenobi too. Young Kenobi, when I first saw the prequels, I was like, I don't want to see this movie. There's no Han Solo character. Obi-Wan in those movies is the Han Solo. He's the wisecracker. And when you go back and watch the original movie, the wordplay between Han and Obi-Wan is so chef's kiss. Oh my God.
That's awesome.
A couple scenes with them in the Millennium Falcon, and then also, I guess, in the cantina as well. They have a couple scenes.
Yeah.
Right.
Where'd you dig up this old fossil?
My final question, and I'm actually going to kind of break it into two, and the question is any advice for collectors, but the second part of that would be what advice would you give to Star Wars collectors that might appeal to them to bring them over to the book side?
My suggestion would be whatever you like the most, whatever character or era you like the most, just go full into that. There's a whole generation of Gen Zs who are gonna like the sequel trilogy more. Go to the Poe Dameron comic. That's really good. Old school fans, go to the Darth Vader comic books. They're so good. If you are really into lore, there's so many books about the Old Republic, you know. So it really depends on what you're into. I would tell any collector, focus on that. There are plenty of collectors who are like, all I want to do is get X-Wing Luke. If you're that person, get every book or comic book with X-Wing Luke, and you'll find something, a branch of something, an interest that'll lead you to something else.
Good
Interesting.
advice.
Very interesting. Well, first of all, John, thank you very much for sharing your time and your passion
Thank
with
you.
the Star Wars literal side of the collecting. I appreciate it. You've got great information, insight there that we weren't really aware of, and that may open up a whole new branch as far as other people who are prepared to talk about their variations on collecting. So again, I thank you very much for your time and your enthusiasm.
Oh, I loved it.
Absolutely. And I'll just remind everyone out there, if you've made it this far in the video, obviously there's something that you like about this. So again, please go ahead and like this video. Also subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet and want to try to get our subscribership up. Give as many people information about the collection, about the books, about the comic books, about the action figures that we can. That's the goal of this. It's a lot of Star Wars, but it's not all Star Wars. So subscribe, check out all the other videos. John, again, thank you very much for your time. Good luck with your YouTube channel. Welcome back. We'll have that down in the description, linked right away. And I always like to end these by saying, may the Force be with you.
Thank
May
you.
the Force be with you.